Hello and welcome back to Tech Careers Japan. I'm Brian and I'm here today with Devi from Build Plus. Devi, can you give us a little bit of an introduction?
Yes. Hi, my name is Devi. I'm working as a consultant at Build Plus, and I cover data scientist, data engineer, AI, ML kind of positions.
Nice, thank you so much. Yeah, and so today I want to go through kind of an overview of Japan's AI landscape and get a little bit more finite as we carry through. So can you just start with just like kind of a bird's eye view description of the AI landscape in Japan?
Yes, I think Japan has always been known for for being the strongest on AI and robotics, and mostly on the manufacturing or robotics, embedded AI system. But recently, I think they are a little bit more focused on natural language processing, generative AI technology. If we think about some of the examples that are known globally, I think SoftBank Robotics, Honda, Panasonic in terms of manufacturing, or Toyota are some of the companies that has been using traditional AI and machine learning technology.
Nice, yeah. I remember Penny. Was that the name of the robot, the SoftBank robot?
Pepper?
Pepper,
Yeah.
Pepper, that was the name, yeah. And that was, I think, sunset like a few years ago now. But that was kind of like early primitive, I guess, AI compared to the stuff we have now. Do you see like a future where those like two things kind of combine, or we have something that's leveraging the generative AI technology inside of like a Pepper-like robot?
That's interesting. I am not sure about that, but I think we do see like SoftBank's technology robotics being used in restaurants now, and there is a high chance someday that generative AI might be implemented into those kind of technology, but I'm not sure at the moment.
Yeah. That's awesome. And so from your perspective, what makes Japan's AI sector an attractive career path?
I think Japan's AI sector is interesting because I think in Japan you can solve social issues using generative AI or AI, and especially now the Japanese society is aging. I think there is a lot of opportunities that an engineer or like people who are interested in building AI products can utilize to make work more efficient, more productive with the technology.
I kind of want to go back to the social issues component. You mentioned like an aging population. What are some of the things that maybe you've seen or are predicting, or kind of trends that you've seen in that area? Like what are some of the solutions maybe for that aging population?
I think one of our clients are actually building a product that can help in the retire home. Nice. I don't know what exactly the specifics are, or how they are able to help, but I know that they work very closely with government to gather the data and to create a product that can be used in a retire home. So those are the kind of social issues that you will get to face in Japanese AI sector.
That's cool. Yeah, I remember when this was still kind of new. I had a conversation with someone who was interested in joining like a MaaS, like mobility as a service, MaaS. And his reason for wanting to was because self-driving and like autonomous cars could really solve a lot of the problems where there's like these older people who are living in the countryside of Japan and they can't drive anymore, they can't really walk anymore, and so how do they get groceries and how do they stay active in the community? And so these self-driving cars could kind of solve that issue and help them get around, and self-driving buses and so forth. And so
that is true, right? I think we see a lot of accidents happening because of the old age. So I think that will help greatly for Japanese aging population, especially in the rural areas.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. And so it's interesting too because it's like almost like a test case for like I feel like a lot of the rest of the world. Like Japan's aging population is so vast compared to maybe some of the other countries, and so a lot of the solutions that end up getting introduced here, I think, can be used in other markets eventually also.
That is true.
And so yeah, I think what you're saying is like really spot on. Nice. And so from your perspective, what are the most like in-demand jobs in Japan, in Japan's AI sector specifically?
I think since last year, we've been seeing a lot of demands for obviously there has always been a demand for traditional machine learning and AI engineer, but since last year we've been seeing a lot of demands for generative AI engineer, where a lot of companies are looking for engineers who have large language models, natural language processing, computer vision, deep learning technology. And I think, I see a lot of job description and high demand for those kind of positions right now.
So I have a question about that, because I do, you're right, I've seen that come up a lot. And my question is like, how deep is the skill set that you're seeing in the people you're working with? Because from like a consumer perspective, it's very new, right? Like it's been like 3 years. But I imagine that before that, there's a lot of work that was done just out of the consumer's vision. And so do you see a lot of engineers with that skill set, like even in Japan, or how has it been for you to kind of find people who have those skills?
That is a great question. Actually, I think in Japan, I do see a lot of AI and machine learning engineers that are more on the traditional side, have been more on the robotics side. So it has been a struggle for me to actually find candidates that has been more on language generative AI side. And for companies, I think they tend to be a little bit more flexible in that sense. So last year I was working for a company that is a startup company and was looking for a generative AI engineer who is just more focused on the research and development side. And for that specifically, I was introducing a lot of candidates that were traditionally on the machine learning side and AI side and had a lot of publication experience. But one of the things that the client was flexible on was also as long as the candidate have built some kind of generative AI technology on their personal time or personal project. I think a lot of clients are open to seeing the CV for those kind of positions, because like you said, generative AI has been in a market for only 3 years. And I think in Japan is still a lot of universities aren't really picking up those kind of classes as well. So there is a little bit of delayed compared to US or China.
That's super interesting. And so kind of a recommendation would be to start working on those types of, if you're interested in this industry, start working on those projects on your own time, because that can kind of help bridge that gap.
Yes, I would definitely, if we have a software engineer or AI engineer that wants to focus a little bit more on generative AI technology, I would definitely suggest them to create their own personal project, go to seminars, or do some kind of publication or take online classes as well.
Okay, that's really great advice for anyone looking to get into Japan's AI industry. And right now, what are some of the AI roles that Shift is hiring?
One of the positions that Shift is hiring for is generative AI engineer within their DAI department, who is built a product from scratch, and they get a lot of ideas from CEO himself sometimes, and they built the product within 1 or 2 weeks as well. And for the generative AI engineer, the type of engineer they are looking for is someone who has hands-on experience building LLMs, but it does not LLM application, but it does not necessarily has to be someone who has extensive experience. If the candidate has a really good experience as a software engineer using Python and have built some kind of chatbot application or natural language processing application in their personal project as well, they are willing to look into the candidate's profile, but they have to be someone who comes with a really strong coding expertise in Python.
Okay, that actually leads well into my next question, which is like, what are the specific technical skills? So you've mentioned like AI and ML skill sets. What are those exact skill sets that you're looking for when you're talking to people, or that people should be aware of if they want to break into this industry?
I think first thing that I look when I'm working with AI engineer or generative AI engineer is how long have they been using Python. And because Python is one of the core technology a lot of companies look for, I look for Python. I look whether the candidates have some kind of experience in AI, algorithm development. whether they have a background in computer vision or computer science as well. But mostly Python, PyTorch, tensors are the kind of things that I tend to look for.
Okay, interesting. And so Python, that's kind of like where they should focus most of their learning, but then also developing those LLM kind of apps and stuff
Applications,
in their
yes.
like personal projects.
Yeah.
So like career-wise, as long as they've been using Python kind of professionally, and then in personal time. Okay, sounds good. And so, are there any specific like certifications or courses that you look for when you're talking to these people, or is it more like?
Yes, I think oftentimes when I'm talking with engineers that wants to transit to be a generative AI engineer, I tend to look for what kind of online classes they might have taken, and I look for Google Professional Machine Learning certification or Microsoft certification like AI Engineer Associate or AWS certification in machine learning or algorithm building.
Thank you for sharing those. What, from your perspective, are maybe some additional things that job seekers from outside of Japan can do to seem more valuable to Japanese AI companies?
I think one of the things that hiring managers tend to look when looking into CV is how much detail the candidate have on their CV. If you have a one-page CV and with a very vague details, that is going to be a little bit difficult. So if you can add more details about what kind of application have you built using Python, what kind of work have you done with required language, programming language, and on top of that, if you have any experience with AI, machine learning, it can be anything. If you can add that, I think it would definitely attract hiring manager attention. Other than that, I think a lot of companies right now within Japan are looking for someone who has N1 or native level of Japanese, even on the generative AI side. So if you are interested in coming to Japan, I think those are one of the things that will highlight your no. I think a lot of companies are looking for JLPT and N1 level or someone who can speak Japanese at native level. So if you have some kind of Japanese certification that you can add on your CV, I think it will also attract attention from hiring managers.
Nice. And so, from your perspective, what is that balance like? Like, how important are language skills compared to technical skills? Like, if someone's really native level Japanese, is it easier for them to get hired if they have less AI skills, or is it really kind of the opposite still? Like, is it still really dependent on their AI skills more than their language skills, or where do you see that balance?
I think it kind of depends on what the company is looking for. If the company is looking for an engineer who has to communicate with their teammates a lot, and if their team members are Japanese, they tend to lean more towards a candidate who might be able to communicate more on Japanese, just because I think the skills can be learnable sometimes. But if the company is urgently hiring, they have a product that they want to deploy as soon as possible, I think they tend to focus a little bit more on the technical side. So I think it really depends on what the company is looking for and what is their need.
Do you see that as a difference of like scale? Like, do you see like larger companies are more open to hire skilled professionals, and maybe startups need more strong Japanese skills, or do you see any sort of split like that? Like, what is your have you seen any split?
I think yes. For startup, actually, I had a client that was looking for a native Japanese generative AI engineer, but they soon realized that the technical expertise that they need in a candidate they could not find it in someone within Japan. So they actually changed their requirement to look for an English speaker only, and this was a startup company. So I think a startup company tends to be a little bit more flexible because they need more expertise in those technology. But with major companies like larger corporation, they have a lot of team members, and they have a lot of programs within the company. So they sometimes tend to focus a little bit more on the language requirement.
Interesting. In Japan, sorry, this is going back to kind of a landscape question. So like in America and I think maybe just Western markets in general right now, and China included actually, we see a lot of like really lean startups in the AI space. Is that the same in Japan, or is it mostly like you were talking like mega corporations that are investing in it, or like where do you see these like newer companies coming from?
I actually think a lot of clients that I'm working right now are, in terms of on the generative AI side, I would say that they have a major company establishing a subsidiary company that focus on the AI or focusing on building products using LLMs and NLP.
Nice, yeah. It's super interesting. And so do you think that's a matter of resources, or do you feel like it's just because that's where, so do you think that it's because they have more money, or do you feel like it's because traditionally, I think that's changing, but I do think that the startup and entrepreneurship has been something of a hurdle in Japan. I mean, it's come a long way, I think, and something we talk about a lot here at our company. But do you see that kind of happening now, like in the AI landscape, or do you think it's really just because they have like enough money to create, like, is it more of maybe a speed issue too, where it's like these bigger companies have the resources, they can go to market a little bit faster, or is there like a lack of enthusiasm from people who are less willing to take a chance on making something completely new?
Interesting. I think with larger companies that establish subsidiary companies, is one of the reason is money, right? They have money that they can invest into those technology, hire people easily as well, and they can attract engineers easily, because stability is one of the key thing in Japan. And also those larger companies already have clients that they can sell their product to or implement their product to. So I think that might be one of the reasons.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, because I think like right now, there's a few companies that are maybe like 30 people that are like starting like AI companies that I've seen like come up in a few places, like get a lot of media coverage. But I haven't seen as many come from Japan, and so I'm just curious to see. But like you're saying, like you're completely right, where it's a lot of these like bigger companies that are making an AI investment and developing an AI product or developing a new company that's focused on AI. Yeah, and it's kind of an interesting dichotomy that's happening here with that split, and so I'm curious to see how it goes. And kind of going back to like as a foreigner who maybe wants to come into Japan and is looking to break into this industry, what do you see as maybe some of those challenges to breaking in that someone who wants to move to Japan would face?
I think one of the biggest hurdle or biggest challenge that a candidate from overseas can face is always going to be the language barrier, because a lot of companies are looking for someone with a higher level of Japanese. So I think that is one of the reasons. And sometimes the salary expectation is something that I have to talk a lot with my candidates, especially if they're moving from America or countries that usually pay a little bit higher than Japanese. So I think understanding the salary in Japanese market is also very important.
Okay, what is the salary range that you're seeing in Japan right now?
I think for AI engineers, if they have 3 to 6 years of experience, because there is a high demand for AI, the salary range tends to be around 6 to 12 mil. But if you are someone who has a really strong skills in AI and in AI, I think the company tends to be a little bit more flexible as well, and how well you do during the interview process also matters. But I think 6 to 12 or 6 to 15 for individual contributor is kind of a normal range in Japan.
Okay. Yeah, and to be clear, I think that when you hear 15 mil, I think it translates roughly to like 100K, like with the currency exchange right now, the USD. But I think in Tokyo, like 15 mil is like puts you in the 1%, like,
that is true.
And so it's like the living standard is very different compared to like if you think of 100 100K USD in San Francisco, that's like you're borderline homeless almost, or like you can't afford to live there really. Whereas in Tokyo, I think it puts you in a very, very different class. But I think it's something just for people to be aware of if they're looking at Japan.
That is true. And also with Japanese company, they provide health insurance. They have a lot of benefits that overseas candidate might not necessarily have as well. So I think those are the things that candidate moving from overseas needs to consider as well.
Nice, yeah. And so to be clear, like we talked about kind of the skill set and how there are times when the technical skills can outweigh the language skills. And so from your perspective, like just like a flat kind of yes or no, like do you see like opportunities for non-Japanese speakers in Japan in AI?
Yes.
Okay, nice, thank you. There's hope.
Yes.
And so how have you seen some of your clients or other Japanese companies integrate AI and other emerging technologies into their offerings?
Mostly I've seen it on the customer service side right now, maybe the call center or call center. But one of the interesting thing that I recently heard from my clients was that they were trying to implement their product for a recruiting firm, which was pretty interesting because we're in that industry, right? So it was interesting to know that.
Nice. What do you, is there anything that you're like personally really excited about, like where you see like AI is being used in this way?
I think I got really excited when I heard one of our clients saying that they are trying to implement AI into a retirement home, which was very interesting for me because I've never thought of AI and retirement home together. So that was something that I was really excited to hear about.
Yeah, I really like that one too. I think that's awesome. Yeah. I think anything that's kind of like socially conscious, the use of this is really interesting and unique. And so what are some of the questions that you get when you're talking to people about like your clients and your like AI, I guess as an industry in general, like what are some of the questions that you're getting?
From the client side, I think they usually want to know like how much experience the candidate has that might be with developing generative AI application or Python, or like what is the market like for generative AI engineers. They also want to know, they want to make changes depending on how the market is. And from the candidate side, I think a lot of candidates that I talk with usually don't have that generative AI experience professionally. So they want to know like if the companies are okay with their personal project, and a lot of candidates that I talk also have project that they have worked personally or seminar or certification that they have taken. So I think from the candidate side, one of the most asked question is whether the company is willing to talk with someone that might not have worked on AI or generative AI technology professionally, but have used it or developed a product on their personal time.
And the answer to that is yes, right?
Yeah.
Okay, nice. Are there any misconceptions that you hear of from either the client side or job seekers?
I think usually from the job seeker side, I talked with candidates where often I hear that because they have worked very extensively with Python and they have taken online classes, that they can easily pick up and build an generative AI product, which is, I think, not true. I don't have a technical background, but I think it's more complex than that. And usually if you're trying to join a startup company or company where they have built a subsidiary quite recently, they're looking for someone who can ask a lot of questions. So if that's the mindset that our job seekers have, I think that's a wrong mindset to have.
Yeah, so it's not so much about your potential as it is about your experience. So it's like, how would you recommend people get involved in maybe making those apps? Like, so if they think they can do it, and because they have really extensive Python experience, they feel like they can pick it up really easily. How would you recommend maybe like they actually start doing it even before they apply? Or like, is there like, would they be building on GPT, or how would you feel like what would you advise them to do?
I think just copy the model that's out in the market, right? That you have a lot of information on, and you don't have to do a research from zero. I think you can just build something just for you to have that kind of like, okay, I've done this, and to add on your CV. It does not have to be something on a very grand scale. It can be just something out in the market.
Yeah, great. So how are companies evaluating that also? Like, are you sharing like the projects with them specifically, or is it like a code bank, or like how do companies evaluate?
I actually ask a lot of my candidates if they have done a personal project to add it on their resume, if not to share the link with me so I can share it with the hiring manager, because I want to increase the chance of them at least getting to meet someone from the company side and just share their experience more in detail. So I ask them to either add on their resume where the section can be personal projects.
Nice. And so are they just providing like links to those projects, or are they describing it, or like, I guess like if I was applying, what's the best way to share that with you? Like, is it literally to show you how it works, or is it going to be just to give you a link to it, or? Yeah.
I think you can mention when we have our casual conversation, but you can also add it on your CV. Sometimes I have candidates who actually record the prototype that they have built and explain it. So and then they send the video to me, which I pass on to the hiring manager.
And so just like kind of wrapping up, what are like some kind of broad strokes, general advice or tips that you would give to people who want to work in AI in Japan?
Something that I would like to say to engineers who are interested in transitioning to AI or like latest technology like generative AI is to go to seminars, take online classes, get certification, build your own personal project. Even if you cannot do it on your professional work experience, I think showing that proactiveness will be highly evaluated by hiring managers.
Perfect. Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Devi. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much, Bryan.
Have a good one.